Nearly forgot the code there for a second. It's crazy to see not all the computers here as well. Everything's a mess. Absolute mess.
What do you feel like being back in here?
It's kind of funny in a way, because I'm normally the first one here anyway, opening up the studio, but normally everything's a little bit more just organized and straight, and now it just feels like it's not your own space. It's super weird. I just like a weird chill across the entire room as well, and everything's just filthy.
When was the last time you were here?
Oh, it must have been March, middle of March, around March 20th, March 25th. Literally the week before lockdown, we were in a meeting on the Monday morning, and we all just decided that, you know, it's best to just not risk anything. So I don't even see us returning anytime soon either. You know, we're in September now, so, you know, after December would probably be the earliest. Yeah, it's weird seeing things in mid-development. Let's see, just mess everywhere. Like everything's just been grabbed and taken. James has been, over the quarantine, James lives in Manchester, and he's been learning how to make pots. So I've not seen any of this stuff, but I don't know what this is. Are these the wheels that he's got here? Just chaos. Yeah, feels weird to be back. Everything else everywhere. At least nothing's on fire. Hello, welcome to the development update of our latest title at White Paper Games. As you can see from the empty studio, we're having to have a lot of the team working remotely at the moment. And just before the lockdown, we did start some initial filming, so you may see some footage from that. But now that things are finally settled on a production point of view, we're going to start ramping up these videos and hopefully release them over the next few months to give a bit of a background about what we've currently been working on. So this is going to be more of a design-focused update for you, and we're going to stay pretty broad on just our general aims. And we've not announced a game just yet, but we're hoping to release some more behind-the-scenes development updates. So although you won't know specifically what the game is, it gives you a little bit of a peek about what we've currently been working on and just what's happening at the White Paper Studio at the moment. So we've been working remotely now for the last 6 months, and this is actually the first time I've been back in the studio since the start of March. The project is currently around the alpha stage, so we're not quite out of alpha, but we've done one milestone that was initial pass of the game. We're currently working on the back half of the game, just getting all the elements in place, blocking out the levels, staging the voice acting, and just getting everything to a playable state.
Stop there 1 second. Hello, you alright? Not too bad.
I like the kitchen, James. Yeah, you don't want to record anything super quick, do you? As you know from a white paper game, we like to focus a lot of our game design on world building. So that means, you know, when you're exploring the worlds, you can root around the drawers, pick up notes from the tables, and just really explore the lives that are going on. And this next game will be no different. From a mechanical point of view, we very much locked in our game mechanics. We know exactly what the game is, and hopefully we can show some footage of the pre-production and kind of idea generation. And we'll explore a little bit where the game was founded and came from. Our philosophy at White Paper Games when beginning the initial conception, especially for the player, putting them first and foremost into the experience, is giving them a lot of player expression and freedom in the world. So we never want to be too hand-holdy. We like to provide mechanics with a lot of variation and opportunity to use in different and interesting ways. So it's not just a linear route through the level. So you'll notice in our previous 2 games, we like to focus a lot on like 4 core levels that we kind of place the player in throughout the play experience. So thinking back to Ether 1, you have the harbour, you have the mines, the industrial area and the village, and they're quite large levels to explore. There's a lot of content in them, and it makes it feel like an open world. And then if you think to the occupation as well, again, 4 key levels. You have the gallery, you have the library, you have the swimming baths, and then also the Bowman building. So you'll see that we like to kind of structure these games in 4 key levels, and then there's a lot of room to kind of explore around there with connectivity through narrative and different subsections, but essentially the game's formula breaks down into these 4 playable spaces. As I mentioned at the start, we're currently in the alpha phase. The previous milestone, we locked down 2 of the levels, so we have a playable representation of what it is we want to create. Now we're moving on to the next 2 levels, and that'll take us up to Christmas, and then after Christmas we'll look at the game from a holistic point of view and really just dissect and refine in the certain areas of the game that we need to create the overall gameplay experience. As narrative is such a key aspect of our games, we'll let NJ explain the narrative pillars that he's approaching to complement the game's design.
The most important thing for me starting a third project was to try and take the aspects that I thought we'd done well on with Ether 1 and the occupation and see how we could expand on those and not stagnate, to try and keep boosting the level of our performance and the people who perform for us. And the ways that I'm obviously most interested in tackling those is through narrative and VO, and the relationship with those 2 things with animation. Working on the occupation, I started to build a deeper understanding of just how important the animation and VO segments working together, just how important that was. So as we started this project, VO and animation and narrative literally work hand in hand, where the VO ideas that consult animation, and we time those out, and we do all of our staging, and we see how long they take, and then we act out and try and temp voice the entire section to give animation a better idea, and then they go to a further stage of blocking, and then once they've blocked it, we do the actual proper VO, knowing where they are in the scene, how they move and why, and then animation get to polish to the final VO. And just that alone has kind of deepened my respect for physical acting, because that's something that we don't tackle head on in the company, in terms of we're not using motion capture. So our animators are the physical actors, which has been really interesting just to see, like whether it's the animators creating reference images, or whether it's me creating reference video for them, and then to see how the acting changes once you have to dial back some of the conversation or use realistic pauses based on the movement that somebody is doing in the scene. That's something that in the occupation we didn't tackle as deeply as we are on this project. And what we're trying to bring in this project is a far more cinematic quality, far more believable performance. And that's not to diminish the performance in the occupation, because the actors we had were absolutely phenomenal and won awards for what we did. But on this one, we're trying to see what is the next level of that. How can we not just rest on our laurels? How can we push that to the next level? And I think that's something that's very fun to be focusing on at the moment.
When it came to the initial stages, I think we were reflecting a lot on where we had come from with the occupation, and aspects about that, about the development of it, and about ideas we had that maybe we didn't get to pursue as fully as we would have liked, or certain things that we think we did well and we really wanted to accentuate in our next title. I know for some of the conversation with the team, a lot of it was based around the kind of cinematic quality, definitely something focused around increasing the amount of character dialogue, movement. As a team, I think some of us certainly felt that the interview scenes at the end of every stage in the occupation was something we really enjoyed and something we could put a lot of attention and detail into, and really wanted to take an idea that would expand that further. So that was certainly a lot of the initial talking points. We definitely also thought a lot about cinematic feel, and a lot of our inspiration comes from cinema. Certainly in the design conversations, we tend to reference films quite a lot, and directors and camera work. So it just made sense that a lot of our inspiration for this next title would come from the cinematic world and not necessarily first and foremost video games.
And one of the ideas was to say, what if you could take elements of and create maybe a kind of love letter to films like Rear Window, Misery. Another film that inspired us, at least in theme, was Prisoners. And with those three films, there are obviously some glaring differences between them, which is why I say, like, we were inspired by elements of them, and you could call the game a love letter to those types of films.
We look towards Alfred Hitchcock a lot, with this kind of more thrillery, suspenseful kind of side. But obviously there's even more contemporary films, directors like David Fincher, who work a lot in the kind of thriller domain. Some of those inspirations might come in kind of narrative or cinematic kind of beats, quite specifically down to events that might occur, but even in a softer way through things like the color palettes or the camera work, we kind of draw from the cinematic world a lot. With the actual interaction of the game itself, again, people will be able to kind of plot a course from our first title, Ether 1, through to the Occupation, through to this title. It's not a million miles away in terms of the kind of interactions we're interested in performing. But hopefully we've taken that and we have evolved in some way. I think from a code aspect, we're able to draw a lot from the code base that we already had with the Occupation, and we've kind of expanded on that, which has helped immensely with iteration and quick prototyping, that we're able to say, hey, we have this base of stuff that we're using and we can simply develop on that. And hopefully some of what players will see is a development. They'll be able to see, okay, I can see the aspects and flavors of the previous game, but they've improved some of the interaction, they've improved some of the flow or the UI.
So that everyone can see and experience different playthroughs, much like you would find in classic immersive sim games, such as Thief or Dishonored. It's up to you.
So as players will hopefully be able to see, we've taken quite a different view in terms of how players might be viewing the game, just to begin with. And some of that carries across also into the kind of interactions that we make available to the player. There are certain ideas that we wanted to achieve with the Occupation that maybe we didn't get as much time, and we were like, okay, we can really drill down to that in this one.
It's a small but hopefully ideal space for what we're trying to achieve. We're doing the entire thing by hand, and at the moment, as you can see, it's quite bare bones. Well, I'm currently in the process of actually looking and sourcing a new Mac, and we'll have a custom desk built in the background where I'll have my keyboard and speaker set up, and everything should hopefully be great. This was all made by hand. All of these acoustic dampening panels that you can see. This is the last thing we did actually. We built timber frames, and then we got wall insulation, just, you know, basically Googling the cheapest and best DIY acoustic dampening that we could. And these literally just fit on the wall like that. And the idea with them is that these are so portable that I could have somebody stand here, somebody in the audio booth, and make a custom setup and hang these here and make an individual isolation booth so that we can have multiple people talk at once. I'll give you a quick demonstration of how much they dampen sound. Hello, 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 hello. They take a lot of the frequencies out, stop a lot of the movement currently in this direction from the room. Hoping that this is going to be enough to also dampen the area here where we've got our window. The next to come here will be a set of curtains, so we can actually try and achieve as much dampening as we can. I'm not currently happy with the way it sounds. Up in the corners of the room, we've got two spots here. If I stand in the middle, there's a bit of a nasty ring, so that's the next thing that I have to do. Other than that, the second usage of the audio room will actually be to be able to play test the game, and as a kind of a multimedia room when we're editing down our trailers, we can have the team in here, have the speakers on the back wall with the TV up there, and actually have an isolated space to listen to what we're doing. When I made all of the audio for Ether 1. There were 6 people and we were all in a tiny space, and it was actually this one little room, and this is now a wall that we've built within that room. And every single time I wanted to record a sound, I had to ask the other 5 guys to be quiet, and if it was 10 minutes, they had to pencils down for 10 minutes, stop typing, which a lot of them found it really hard to do, and we were on a tight time scale and budget. So just to have a dedicated space to do this is just pushing the quality of our product, hopefully, up and up and up as much as it will go. So I'm really excited for this room to be finished. This area is the dedicated vocal booth where the VO artist would actually stand and be able to record. And luckily we have a fair amount of soundproofing, although I still need to do something with the door here just to stop all those last little frequencies from getting through. And then when the curtains are actually closed themselves, the booth is pitch black at the moment, so that's one of the next things, but the booth is really, really nice and isolated. One of the things I was really worried about was if somebody has to shout, the sound that can escape and reverb back into there. We've isolated almost all of that, which is really nice. And I've done a test in the room as well, so I'm actually really happy with the way it's sounding. Something we've learned from other friends in the industries, some of the guys from OM Studio and Vault 501 in LA were really humble and showed us around what they had, and I didn't quite take into consideration how much comfort for a voice actor, how much that actually comes into it, because a lot of things we've done in the past have been over Skype, but obviously because we have the space now, we want to use it. So the next step for this area is getting some nice comfy, really thick rug so that the actor can take their shoes off, have a 2-hour voice session and not feel like their legs are hurting because of the concrete below. Having some kind of lighting above, that even they have the ability to switch with their hand and adjust the lighting just so it's a space that they're comfortable in. I think next here would come a screen that links up to where I work on the other end of the room, so that as I'm adjusting script or they're adjusting script, if they have a change, we're updating each other's work and we can see what each other is seeing. That's going to be quite crucial. And then one of the last things, just leftover acoustic reflection panels. I think I'm going to have to do something or other up here, just to make sure that every single last piece of sound is being diverted somewhere else as opposed to reverberating back around to where the person's talking. And that, I believe, is all.
That was great.
I don't know.
It's been a really interesting challenge trying to work remotely with a team the size of ours. We've not worked remotely actually for the past 8, maybe 9 years. When White Paper first founded, we were in our bedrooms, we were trying to get a game off the ground, we were working on Ether 1, and we were very much a remote team then, but it was a smaller scale team, it was a smaller scale project, and there was a few initial concerns about working from home. But I mean, we've got to be very thankful because the production didn't slow down. Working with our publisher has been great working remotely, and essentially all we need is our computers plugged into our kitchen tables or bedroom offices, and we're pretty much good to go with an internet connection. So we've got to be very thankful for that. Yeah, we've had a few questions about hiring when working remotely, and we did have initial concerns on the team. How do you incorporate these team members to make them feel part of the team and not really isolated working from home, especially not having met team members in person. Even things like the interview process or the hiring process, doing that fully remotely definitely caused some interesting challenges. So we've hired a new designer and a new animator, which you'll meet later in the development videos. A lot of our team have been working together, for the past 6 or 7 years. So we already had our processes down. We have our production pipeline. We kind of know what we're doing in a lot of places. Especially with new team members joining the team, you do have to mentor them a little bit more and just make sure the feedback is coming through okay, making sure we're constantly checking in. But it definitely doesn't feel like we've slowed down, and if anything, it's made our team a lot stronger. So when we are finally back in the studio and we're able to develop in the same room, just looking over your shoulder and seeing something cool that someone's developing and not having to, ask for those updates, it definitely creates a bit more of a creative atmosphere. So being in the studio, having those daily connections, even things like team meals for reaching a certain milestone, you got to be mindful of those small celebrations, and working from home definitely causes a few barriers in that, but it's things that thankfully we're learning to overcome, and it's definitely made our communication a lot stronger.